Oh, yes. We are back. The boys are back. I know it's been over a little week now, but we got some juicy stuff for you today. We are talking some trades that we have seen. We are talking a little bit of fantasy news that's happened recently. Even today, as we record on June the 30th, we got a little news there. And talking some cheap starters that you can plug into your lineups this year, whether you're contending. This is definitely for contenders, but if you're rebuilding, there's a couple rebuilding options in here. Guys that maybe people are forgetting about that can help you out and still give you value at a low cost. Not necessarily a buy low, but a cheap starter. So hopefully this helps you out and you can go capitalize on this and take advantage of your link baits any way you can to try and get one over. I mean, because at the end of the day, it's all about winning, right? What Al Davis say, just win, baby, just win. So how we doing this morning, guys, or this evening, guys?
Doing good, man. I'm so excited to get back in the seat here and talk some football with you guys. Just excited to talk about some of these guys that we can acquire for cheap and really take over these leagues and really become kingmakers, man.
Nice, I like it.
Same here. We got a lot to discuss, so let's get to it.
All right, well, let's get right off rip there, Mick. I like it. Right down to business. All right, so let's start off with a little bit of news that happened today, man. One Jonnu Smith, somebody who took a little bit to break out, but now here he is. He had a great season in Miami in that Mike McDaniel offense, helping out Tua to stop from having mush mouth brains for the rest of his life. A little dump off, and now he will not be playing in Miami in 2025. He will be playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers for what's kind of a weird trade. It had a late round pick swap, but they also gave Jonnu a 1 year, $12 million extension. So it's good for Jonnu. Kind of. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm not into it, man, to be honest with you. Pat Fryermuth's still there, and, I mean, I thought he proved to be a legitimate target in that offense, so I'm a little confused by it, but, I mean, hopefully they are somebody that they can.
Yeah, why does Mike Tomlin hate Pat Fryermuth?
I don't know. I'm hoping that it's more of like complimentary play or just Pat Fryermuth is a better blocker. I don't know what the case is, but they don't really have many targets there outside of DK. So, I mean, realistically, like, I guess bring somebody else that's kind of a cheaper option. And I wouldn't be giving up Minkah Fitzpatrick, but, I mean, hey, that's up to him. I don't get paid to make those decisions.
I don't know, Mick. How do you think this affects Jonnu's fantasy value, especially in Dynasty?
Oh, he ended the year so good in Miami. I think he goes to Arthur Smith, right? And I mean, he did outplay Kyle Pitts when he was with Kyle Pitts with Arthur Smith in Atlanta. I think it's maybe of a little stock down for Jonnu, just maybe a little, but then again, he's got Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball. So Aaron Rodgers does like his tight ends. We could see Jonnu having some touchdowns. I think who it really affects is everyone else. I think I was pretty high on Fryermuth. Not really. I like Fryermuth more in the past, but I think Fryermuth is pretty close to dead. Not even like getting drafted in redraft now for your tight end one at least.
Yeah,
I think it kills Fryermuth. I think it helps Waddle. I think Waddle's going to get more of those targets. I think Achan's going to get probably put up like 70 to 80 catches again, so you can pencil Achan in for being another RB1 because Jonnu's target on there. And then I think another sleeper guy, someone that I liked out of college is Malik Washington. If someone were to get hurt like Waddle or Tyreek, and then maybe Malik Washington can come in and be that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, and give you some flex weeks. He might be a nice little sneaky buy low.
Yeah, Washington was somebody that only like the deep sleeper guys really knew about.
He was good.
I mean, yeah, he was really good. But everybody was down on him because he's behind Tyreek, behind Waddle, and then Jonnu came out and broke out in Miami. So, like, man, I think you're onto something there with Malik Washington. Man, with Fryermuth too, like Pat Fryermuth is not a bad tight end. I don't know what's going on in Pittsburgh. Yeah, like Pat Fryermuth was the guy for multiple years before Kyle Pitts had his breakout. And, of course, we saw that again when Kincaid had his big breakout, and then guys like Laporta and them got looked over. And then, this past year, Warren had his big breakout. And then guys like Colson Loveland, who was the guy for a couple of years, like he got overlooked, which, hey, draft capital spoke. They still believed in Loveland. But, yeah, I don't know what's going on in Pittsburgh, man. Like, what are they doing? So for all you Pat Fryermuth owners out there, that's not looking great. I can tell you that. But I don't think Johnny Smith is going to be the long term there. I mean, it's just a 1-year extension. It's not like they extended him 2 or 3 years. Pat Fryermuth, I believe he's worth holding. Or he's still buying super cheap right now. If you can go get Pat Fryermuth, especially in a tight end premium league for any second, I think, especially if you can get Weasel late, I think it's okay. But you might find someone who's panicking and pick him up for a third. I doubt it, but I think you could.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, and man, to stay with Pittsburgh, I know that's really fantasy relevant, even for IDP, because in my opinion, it's just a 1-for-1 swap. Minkah Fitzpatrick from the Steelers, Jalen Ramsey from the Dolphins. They pretty much just pass each other on the flights through the air, just changing cities. I like Jalen Ramsey better. I do, but I don't see why. Like, why did you go ahead and do that? Unless you just don't like Minkah Fitzpatrick. Maybe Mike Tomlin's on the thing where, hey, look, I don't like these people. I'm gonna do what I want to do. I don't know.
If I'm not mistaken, it's quite a bit younger, if I'm not mistaken, and he's probably going to want a ransom coming up here soon. So I'm sure it was more of a money play than anything. But I mean, I believe in Minkah Fitzpatrick more than I do Jalen Ramsey at this point in his career. It's a wild trade on paper, and I mean it's going to look good in both sides of the trade there for both teams. I think they're going to be happy with their return investment, but still, like, I'm more of a fan of Minkah Fitzpatrick, and I think to be somebody that's going to be a huge improvement for that Miami defense.
Yeah, it's man, I feel like they're both the same guy. Yeah, you can throw age out there and all that. I think it's just kind of who you like better at this point between the two of them. But that's just me. I mean, I'm not a super big defense guy, so I don't know. Maybe what do you think about that trade?
I think he's frozen.
Okay, so he doesn't like the trade. The stone cold look on the face. So, all right. So let's get into our next topic here. So we're going to talk about some cheap starters. Okay. And what I mean by that is people that are kind of being overlooked right now, that aren't going to cost you a fortune, that still have value and could definitely grow back in value. So, like maybe, we got all these influx of rookies coming in right now. Rookie fever is alive and well in dynasty circles. So with that being said and that happening, other positions, these veterans, these older veterans are going to be slipping through the cracks, being sold for cheap. Oh, I want to get this aging guy off my roster. But as we know, if you're competing, you're not worried about age, right? So much. Now, obviously, yeah, you're not going to want to go get Aaron Rodgers, right? Because like that dude already said, hey, I'm not playing next year. So we don't want to invest in somebody that's not going to be on our roster next year.
Yeah.
But guys like that. So we'll talk about some of those guys. So Mick, who do you got to start us off with? Who is your first cheap starter that you can go out and get? So we'll shift over here to Slayton.
I think
that's a lag there.
But he's struggling.
In my opinion, this guy had to battle.
All right. All right, so we got some technical difficulties out there in LA. Maybe that San Andreas fault's hitting hard right now. I don't know. Um, but we wish everybody well. But Slayton, who do we got, man? Who do you like as your first cheap starter that can help you win?
My first cheap starter is going to be old Concrete Connor, man. James Conner, playing for Arizona Cardinals. He is ranked RB 31 from what I've seen. He signed a 2-year deal last year in week 12. They have a much improved offensive line, a much improved defense. So I think the game's going to be a lot more even game script in entirety. So I think he's going to have a lot more time on the field and playing and running the ball quite a bit there. And from the betting odds for Arizona, they're looking like a 9-win team right now. So I'm willing to bet on that. And he's shown year after year that he has been somebody that is able to tote the rock. And Trey Benson's there, but I don't think he really is. He's going to be much of a factor. I think they're going to run James Conner into the ground till they can't run him no more.
Yeah, which is funny you bring up James Conner because I think Trey Benson is a guy you should go out and invest in now before he breaks out. So because we've seen in the past James Conner, man, that he could break at any moment, any time, any game. It's kind of scary. Just because he's had so many injury issues in the past. But I like that though. I think James Conner is very, very affordable and has done very well in that offense. So I like where you're going with that.
It's something cheap, man. Like I think you could probably get him
cheap.
late second, in most leagues, and nobody's really going to bat an eye at it. But at the end of the day, he breaks right. He's a league winner.
Yeah, and if he's someone like let's say you need one more little piece and you don't have a lot of draft picks, right? Because you traded your first away, you probably traded a lot of your higher seconds if you had any. You could go get him for a second, and he could be that last piece of the puzzle. And even if he does get hurt, it gives you 8 solid weeks. I mean, that's still good, I mean, for a second on a contending team, dude, you can't ask for much more than that.
Who are you thinking?
So my first guy, I'm going to go with Brian Robinson Jr. So he's been kind of, as far as like the name value, he wasn't a big stud coming out of college, even though I liked him at Alabama. I thought he did very well. The NFL thought differently, which is fine. We see that all the time. The NFL thinks differently on different players. Okay, not a big deal. Not concerned about that. But looking at the lack of competition behind him, I mean, he's got Austin Eckler, who not anything to be afraid of. I mean, the guy is just going to be in the gym the whole season, so it's not going to be a big – and he'll get hurt probably 2 weeks into the season, and he'll be fine. I think Brian Robinson Jr. is gonna eat, man, and I think he's not going to cost you a lot because he's not real sexy. Like the name just doesn't really pop to you. He's the wrong B. Robinson that people want.
He's the mistaken draft one.
Yeah. He's the one you're kicking yourself because you thought you took Bijan Robinson and instead you took Brian Robinson.
Yeah, 100.
So now I'm going with Brian Robinson. I think the name really is what's going to make him so affordable. Yeah.
Brian Robinson was on my list.
What do you got for us?
Oh, okay. There we go. Yeah. Who's on your list, bud?
All right. So before I logged out, my first cheap guy is going to be Juwan Jennings. I like Juwan Jennings a lot this year. He's 27. He's just entering his prime, and he's 27. He's the type of guy that I think didn't come out as an elite talent, but he's kind of made his way. He's worked his ass off, and he does the little things that Shanahan likes. He does the blocking. And then last year, he came in and completely took that offense by storm. I think he's going to get more targets or garner more targets than Ricky Pearsall if both of them are playing. And Ayuk tore his ACL in like week 9, so he's not going to be ready. He's going to be on the pup. And a big thing that I always like to do is fade wide receivers the first year coming off an ACL. They never seem to be right. So I don't really think Ayuk is going to be doing much this year. I'm not drafting Ayuk in Dynasty. I'm holding, but for redraft, I won't touch Ayuk. I think Jennings is going to be pretty good. And I think you could get him for decently cheap in your leagues. I mean, you'll probably have to pay a second plus to get him, but I don't think he's that high of a value to where people have him and they're like, oh, Juwan Jennings is my wide receiver 3 on my team. No, I can't sell him.
Yeah, Jennings like sneaky good. And the age, I think people are sleeping on that. But I mean, you're right, dude. Like, so they don't have Debo anymore, right? So they're gonna have to look elsewhere for targets. You know, McCaffrey, I've gone on record saying I'm out on McCaffrey. Like, fool me too many times, I'm out. You can draft McCaffrey if you want to, but I'm gonna warn you right now, hey, don't do it. But McCaffrey, target hog. George Kittle, target hog. And I agree 100% about Ayuk. I don't think that everybody gets scared about the ACL because that's your cutting ability. And with these guys, that's especially wide receivers, that's your job. That's your bread and butter is can you break in and out of routes and having to get the feel for it back, get the fear out of your mind. You know, like, oh, I don't want to hurt myself again, right? So that's where Juwan Jennings is going to step up and he's going to eat. He's going to be the downfield guy. He's going to be the intermediate guy. Like Ricky Pearsall is going to eat too. Like I'm with you, dude. I think Juwan Jennings is a great cheap buy here that's going to get you good points. So,
thank you.
But I gotta share Juwan Jennings. So I really like that. But I'm not selling him for cheap. I can tell you, whoever's listening out there, he ain't getting sold for cheap because I'm still trying to compete. So, but anyhow, all right, Mick, who we got? I mean, Slayton, who you got? Who's next?
My next one is going to be a tight end, like Taka. Man, he is one of my favorite tight ends in all of fantasy. He is a tight end. Tight end 9 comes off way late in most drafts. But in a dynasty league, a lot of people just overlook him. You know, they're like, oh, you know, there's not a whole bunch going on there. And they might be a little bit fearful of Golden stepping in there or what the deal is. I don't know. But the general consensus of what I have found on him is he really isn't getting a whole lot of steam in the market. And he's trusted by the Green Bay offense. He's 24 years old. And Jordan Love is shown to be a gunslinger. So, I mean, what's holding me back? And I'd much rather take him, and especially if you're in a tight end premium league, I mean, the dude rips. So that is one of my favorite tight ends that I can sneak late, and he's going to be a young guy that you could probably get for, you know, a mid-second, maybe 2026, 2025. I don't know. But it's definitely worth it, every bit of it, you know.
Yeah, because Tucker Kraft had an amazing year. And I'm calling his breakout year, and dude, his value went through the roof. And then now here we are a year later, very affordable. So it's funny to see how quickly we live in that what have you done for me lately world when it comes to fantasy football. And just because Matthew Golden's there doesn't mean that Tucker Kraft is still not going to eat. I mean, yes, they have a lot of mouths to feed around there, but in the coming time, like that's going to be, I don't think there's going to be as much as people might think. I think Jordan Love's going to settle in, find his targets, find the guys that he trusts, and Tucker Kraft has shown to be one of the guys that he trusts.
Yeah.
I love Tucker Kraft. I think that's a great one. I'm curious on how cheap you can get him because I think owners are aware of Tucker Kraft when they have him because he, to me, is like almost a mini George Kittle. He racks up some big plays, and no one saw that coming from this dude because they had Musgrave. They drafted Musgrave first, and then Tucker Kraft was thrown on the wayside. So it's kind of crazy. Everyone liked Musgrave better too because he was more of an elite athlete. So
Yeah.
Kraft, I think, is a good buy. I like it a lot.
Yeah, if you held Kraft this long and you had him on your taxi squad, like hats off to you. You figured it out. You know, you were smarter than everybody.
That's the Mark Andrews and the whatever the first tight end drafted before him was. That's like the same corollary.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
You guys remember that? The Ravens drafted someone.
There was Hayden Hurst. It was Hayden Hurst, Mark Andrews, and then there was another guy. I want to. Oh man, he was like another white dude, I think. Anyways, but yeah, they drafted like 3 tight ends that year, and I was like, what are they doing? They have no clue what they're doing. And then Mark Andrews just kind of went away with it. Hayden Hurst had a decent year when he went to Atlanta, but that was really it. You know, after that was, you know, he was gone. But super athletic, 100% super athletic. So, all right, well, who's our next one? What's our next cheap starter that people can go out and get?
I'm going to go with someone that's I kind of put in the same class as Brian Robinson, and that's Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard has done nothing but show us that he can put up elite seasons in the last 3 to 4 years once he gets a good workload. I really like Tony Pollard, and he's got a lot of tread left on the tires because when he was first in Dallas, he really didn't get too many carries. And then when he was the leader in carries, he puts up 1,000 yards. He catches the ball well. And I do think Pollard is going to be viable this year. And he's not as old as people think. I think people are more treating him in the older ilk of the backs, but I think he's got some tread. I think you can grab him and still probably get some serviceable years in the future as also as this year. Like, I like Tajay Spears, and I think Tajay Spears is going to eat into a little bit, so I'm not going to hold Tony Pollard to an RB1, but he's probably going to put up RB2 numbers and still be viable for your team. And whoever has him right now is kind of just like Tony Pollard. He's probably my RB3. I might be able to get rid of him. Yeah. You might be able to trade a rookie and get Pollard plus, and that might not be a bad bet.
Yeah, because I mean Pollard, like what people don't realize is, yes, he's been in the league a little bit longer than most, but he was running behind Ezekiel Elliott, and so he didn't have to run the ball a lot. He still has a lot of tread on those tires, even though he's been in the league a little bit longer. So you're right. Like, people think, okay, yeah, he's older, but nah, he's not.
Which all drafts, man, it's crazy to see how far he falls in like best ball drafts and like your dynasty drafts. Like, he goes so late, and like I don't understand why there's so much hate on him. You know, like I haven't figured it out yet.
I think this is going to be like kind of the last year for Pollard and Spears, because I do believe that Tennessee is going to go try and get their running back next year, whether that be in free agency or in the draft. Because, I mean, Pollard was just kind of already as a free agent acquisition, so he was just there. And with new regime and all that stuff like that, you know, they're going to want their guy, this and that. But I think Pollard can definitely help you this year. I agree. I agree with that. I've got a couple guys that I think they're on the older side. They've been the workhorse running backs for their teams in the past, and they're getting overlooked by this insane running back class that we've had so far. My first guy is DeAndre Swift. In the Ben Johnson offense, okay. DeAndre Swift is going to fit into that offense. Okay. He's getting overlooked by all these rookies, and I think this is the right time to capitalize. I'm not saying go out there and spend a whole bunch of money for him. I'm just saying if you have a second to throw around and maybe like a taxi squad player that you don't really care about, maybe a second and third, something like that. If you're contending, go grab you some DeAndre Swift. Yes, look, we've talked about we like Kyle Monangai. Like, that doesn't change. We still like this guy. But I think DeAndre Swift is going to do well in this Ben Johnson offense. I mean, am I crazy about thinking that?
Oh, No, I mean, he showed last year that he was pretty damn good too. And I think it's pretty big a testament that they didn't attack anybody in free agency. They didn't attack anybody necessarily in the draft. They waited until what, the 6th round, 7th round to draft Manungai. Like,
Yeah.
I really think that he has a spot on that team. I really don't think Roshan Johnson's going to really be much. He hasn't really shown anything since he's been there. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's more of a testament to Swift than it was to Johnson. With
Well, and you're talking to two Roshan Johnson truthers here.
so I
Like
mean,
we like us some Roshan. So which I think Roshan's going to fit well too. I mean, but Swift is the RB1 for that team. But I don't think we see as much Monangai as we do Roshan Johnson this year.
Yeah,
Because I mean, think about what Ben Johnson did in Detroit, right? With Montgomery and Gibbs.
Yeah, I just think Roshan's like 70% of Montgomery. I don't really expect him to be putting up Montgomery numbers. If I had Roshan and he pops in the first couple weeks, I probably might try to sell him, honestly, because I think Swift is actually fun fact. Swift has never finished lower than an RB2 in his entire life playing fantasy, and everyone's down on him. Everyone hates him, and he's finished as an RB2 every single year. No one would say that either. So I like Swift. I think this is probably going to be his best year. So if you can get him for cheap, which you can, because I remember I was a Swift truther. I love Swift. I drafted him. He was one of my first rookie picks I ever made when I first started playing Dynasty, and I was all in. I thought this guy was amazing. And then he came into Detroit, and he looked good. But then there's like some things where he's got lack of intuition and hustle. And then I think everyone's just kind of soured on him. But I think he is going to eat this year. Like I'll be drafting Swift in a lot.
Well, when they traded him on draft day, though, I mean that was kind of crazy. When I think that kind of made a lot of people be like, "Whoa, what's going on with DeAndre Swift over here? Like, why are they doing one? Why are they drafting another running back? And then two, why are they trading for him?" And it was just kind of straight up trade for Swift and Montgomery, which it worked out for Detroit. By all means, it worked out for Detroit. I mean, Ben Johnson got that guy, that prototype that he wanted. Of course, he doesn't have a lot of the say there. That's going to be Dan Campbell and the Ford family. But man, DeAndre Swift back with Ben Johnson. He knows the offense. He knows the lingo. He doesn't have to learn anything new. So he might have a little bit of that job security, if you will, with his former OC now being his head coach.
Most definitely.
So, but yeah, that's my first one. I'll get my second one. Hopefully y'all don't snipe me by then, but we do have snipes by slate. So,
well, kind of a pick flavor. They're both on the same team. They're both nasty, but I mean, you can acquire them for stupid cheap. I have Javonte Williams or Miles Sanders. One of them's going to get the damn job, and they're going to be forced. We've all seen this story before. So
it's going to be Jaden Blue.
I don't see. Yes, man. Jaden Blue, I don't know. But, between these two guys, I mean, two guys are kind of a heavier setback, somebody that can eat a bunch of carries, and they have been that role there in Dallas is fruitful and opportunity. Yeah. I mean, they're both disgusting, but if you're a contender and you're looking for cheap options and cheap running backs, or you're playing the running back game and you're loaded up on wide receivers and you're just getting a whole bunch of RB2s on their teams and trotting those out in a weird fashion on your dynasty roster, these are two guys that you can get for nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people I think are still trying to think that Javonte Williams is going to be the new Ezekiel. Man, let's stop trying to make every Cowboys running back Ezekiel Elliott, right? Ezekiel Elliott was a dog coming out of Ohio State to begin with. So let's chill out with that.
I don't think he's going to be anything crazy like that, but he's going to be a serviceable running back if you're needing some like just floor points. I mean, hey, you're going to get at least what 7, 10?
I don't think he's going to lose you any games. I mean, yeah, if you can get 10 points out of Javonte every week, like you're good. I'm kind of burned on Miles Sanders, but I don't know. Who knows? New team, maybe rejuvenated. We didn't see it happen in Carolina, but we can see a lot of anything happen in Carolina.
No.
No. He did have a pretty big game, I think, in his final game for Carolina, too, at the end of last year when Chuba went down. I think Sanders had 100 yards, and it showed that he's still got a little bit in the tank. So he might be a good little handcuff to Javonte.
Yeah. All right, who you got, Mick? What's your next juicy buy cheap starter?
Right. I'm going to go back to wide receiver, and I think I have two guys kind of in the same ilk. I have Jacoby Myers and Michael Pittman. I think Michael Pittman, the league has soured on him. A year ago, he's a 100-catch guy, a 1,000-yard guy. He is a really, really good receiver. He's a quality, big possession receiver. But he played with a broken back last year, and now the whole community is down for him. You couldn't get him. You could probably get him for like a mid-first last year, and now this year you could easily get him for seconds. And I think adding Pittman would be a very, very nice addition if you put him as your wide receiver 4, if he's your flex and your buy-ins. And then same thing with Jacoby Myers. Aside from Brock Bowers, you got Geno, who's an upgrade. Geno is going to be great. So I like Jacoby Myers too.
Yeah,
I think he's going to eat and put up another big year.
I'm a bet Jacoby Myers. I think he's going to eat a bunch of targets like he did last year. He's just a slot merchant, if you will. And every year he's proven to be pretty damn good. I mean, he's had, I think, 1,000 yards the last couple of seasons. He's been serviceable, and he's kind of been that forgotten guy. And those are the type of guys that I pick up and just use them as four plays. You know, I've done very well with getting a lot of guys that have high floors, and I can just try to each week and know what I'm getting out of them. And he's one of those guys that you pretty much know what you're going to get out of him each week.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Michael Pittman because I've got Josh Downs on my list as well because so many people are getting out on this Colts passing offense because of the Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. Like, hey, who's going to be the quarterback? But at the end of the day, who cares because they both suck anyway. So, but at that, they're going to be trailing. They're going to have to pass the ball. So that's why I was going Josh Downs just because the kid can play every position at wide receiver, you know, so – just such a utility knife there. So my second veteran running back that's getting overlooked by all these new sexy running backs coming in the draft is one Joseph Mixon. And Joe Mixon is steady Eddie, if you will, when it comes to running backs. He was the workhorse, a top running back you took in drafts he's with the Bengals. He showed you, hey, look, the guy can catch out of the backfield. All right, the guy can run between the tackles. Joe Mixon is just your all-around, every down back. And, man, for Houston last year, he showed why. I mean, he against the Colts specifically, which, you know, kind of pains me to say this, you know, because, you know, go Colts. But he did whatever he wanted to against the Colts. And that showed me right there. I was like, look, man, Joe Mixon still has it right now. You know, yeah, he was the guy with Cincinnati. He ran the ball a lot, okay? But they also passed the ball a lot too. So I think Joe Mixon's somebody who's getting widely overlooked by all these rookie running back fever. And I think you can go out here and you can get him, and he can still give you borderline RB1 production this year.
Yeah, no, I definitely go on that. I'm a big Joe Mixon guy. I've had him in several of my leagues, and he is exactly what you say, a steady Eddie. He's somebody that's got a high floor. You know what you're getting out of him. You know, you've seen what he has there. You see what he can do and what he can put on tape. And I really that's going to be a good running offense next year in Houston. I think they're going to move the ball very well. I think that offensive line's not terrible. So I think he's going to have another good season. And people are kind of out, which I don't understand. I think it's probably more the age more than anything, but I really think that he's going to have yet another season of what we thought it's going to be, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and look at his competition. You know, like you brought in Woody Marks, not great draft capital. You know, I mean, I don't like the competition behind him. Damian Pierce, you know, he was their guy whenever they drafted him, but he was just a guy, right? He was never designed to be the guy in Houston. They have their guy in Joe Mixon now, and you got Nick Chubb is in town now, so he's also kind of tied to like kind of pick your poison. But it's Joe Mixon's team, okay? Like he established, hey, like look, I fit in this offense, right? So am I crazy concerned about Nick Chubb? No. Am I a little bit concerned about Nick Chubb? Yeah, because they're gonna give Nick Chubb the ball, you know. But I think Nick Chubb's gonna be more of like your red zone kind of.
I definitely agree on that side of it.
The ball with Joe Mixon. So you're not going to be passing the ball to Nick Chubb. So that's why I'm going with Joe Mixon, just because he's getting overlooked, and I'm not too worried about Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like, if they didn't sign Nick Chubb, how would we be valuing Mixon this year? We'd be valuing him the same as last year. I think Nick Chubb scared everybody off of Mixon, and then there was reports that he came in a walking boot, and then there were reports 2 days later that he's at a kids camp without the walking boot. So I think that actually scared some people off more. I think Mixon's healthy. I think he was, I believe, RB6 in points per game last year. I know he missed a big chunk in the beginning, but I remember I had him on one specific redraft team, and every time he was in the lineup, he was getting the bulk of the carries, and he was putting up massive points. And they're going to do the same thing this year. So I do like Mixon. I think he's a really good, cheaper buy than he was last year, because you weren't getting him unless you offered a 25 first last year. And now people have soured just because they added Nick Chubb, who broke his foot at the end of last year, coming off of a double ACL again. So who's to say that Nick Chubb isn't even going to make the team? So I do like Mixon. I think he's a good buy if you can. It just depends on what you can get him with, because whoever has him is probably a contender right now. So again, you might have to do that young little rookie swap, and maybe if a rookie's popping, sell your rookie for Mixon, and then maybe add a little plus to get that hammer in your lineup.
Most definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I got a wide receiver that I think some people, there's a new hotness in town, right? That's kind of making this older guy maybe not seem, so sexy anymore. Okay. It's going to be Adam Thielen. And Ted McMillan is there. I get it. Everybody's high on Ted, like, oh, so great, this and that. But there has not been one season outside of injury for Adam Thielen that he hasn't been good for you in fantasy. There hasn't been one. Even with Carolina, with Bryce Young struggling, Adam Thielen still did good. Like, tell me how that works. Like, make that math make sense. So I don't feel like there's a better, like, veteran, like deep veteran wide receiver out there that you can buy on the cheap that will give you quality points and help your team. Not like, oh, could I start? Like, no, you're gonna start him, right? Then Adam Thielen. I mean, that's just somebody that I looked at and I'm like, no, he's got to be on my list.
100%. I can't tell you how much best ball money I won off of Adam Thielen.
I mean, my point right there, dude. Like, the guy's going to go off.
He's a great flex play in most of your league. He can quietly get you that 10, 15 points, and people are like, how the heck are you beating me with Adam Thielen in your lineup? And I'm like, hey, it is what it is, man. Sorry.
Yeah, the ball is going to ball.
Bryce Young likes him. He's shown it the last 2 years. He's Bryce Young's go-to target. And I get Ted McMillan is the new hotness, like you said, Justin, but Thielen is there. He's proven, and he's shown no signs of slowing down. If he's injured, he's injured. He's not in your lineup. If he's playing, he's in your lineup, and he's scoring you points. So I like that. Actually, when I was going through players today, I saw Adam Thielen came to my mind on a good buy too.
Yeah. So with some of these guys being talked about, going and acquiring for cheap, I really don't want to use the term buy low because I feel like everybody uses that term and it's so played out. But I mean, it kind of is, I guess. I'll yield. It'll be a buy low. But what do we think we can go and get these players for? So like a Tony Pollard that we talked about earlier. So what do you think we can go out and get Tony Pollard for?
It depends on who's got him. Every league is different. Every team has their own makeup and schematics. It depends who has him. Mostly a contender has him already, backfilled with a couple other RB2s on their team and probably an RB1. So you might have to, let's say if you are wide receiver rich, you can trade your wide receiver 5 or wide receiver 4 because wide receivers go to higher premium, and maybe throw a third on top of that and get Pollard. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Third or a late second is what I was running with there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good. So, how about one? What's a good juicy one?
For who?
I don't know. How about we talked about Joe Mixon? So there's a perfect example. Much older running back that, let's say I'm a contender and I need, an RB3, RB4, something like that, because these guys go down all the time. What are you going out there looking to offer, and what are you willing to sell him for?
I've got one that comes off the top of my mind. So Mixon's like 28, 29, entering his later years. So I would try to find an RB that's maybe a little under him in age. I mean, I don't think you don't want to take Junkins or Caleb Johnson and try to get Mixon and then maybe have to put a plus on that for Johnson. I think you're better off rolling with the rookie in that situation. I would probably take someone that's maybe valued a little higher than Mixon. Like I'm kind of thinking of a James Cook who maybe doesn't have a good pathway in the later years because we don't know if Buffalo's going to sign him. So maybe you could take James Cook and get Mixon plus. Maybe take James Cook and get Mixon plus a second. And then that way you're kind of backfilling your picks for next year. You're still building, but you're still filling in that production that may be better than James Cook, who's not relying on the touchdowns this year.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, what do you think?
I like to acquire running backs for late first or 2027 first, 2026 first, something that'll give me operation to I'm going to sell you a first right now, but I'm going to get that first back by the end of the season. I'm very confident in how I approach things to where I feel like I could get a first back or I can get, some sort of payment back before that asset is either, used or whatever, So a lot of the times what I'll do is offer a late first or a 2027 first and try to pry them off their team because a lot of the times they're looking for something high like that. They're looking for a higher piece. And a lot of the times you can get that easily in a 2027 first or a 2026 late first. It's really easy to go back and acquire. There's lots of different options on ways to do it. Granted, I wouldn't do it if you are a contending team and you're trying to keep everything afloat. But it's one of those plays that I've done it in the past and I'll do it again. I'll offer a first and let it ride.
Here's a trade for Mixon that happened a couple weeks ago. Now this is pre Jonnu Smith, right? So Joe Mixon and Jalen Noel. So they've clearly bought into the Texans offense, right? Trade Mixon and Noel for Jalen Waddle. So I think for me, give me the Waddle side. Today, right? Today, But if I'm needing a running back, I can trade Waddle, get a starting running back to give me points, and I can get a young wide receiver, which we don't 100% think Jalen Noel is going to be much, but still, you never know. But I don't know. A couple weeks ago, I mean, how's that trade look?
I mean,
I think
on both sides. I don't think it's a horrible trade by any means. I think it's
Yeah.
pretty, and like just depending on how you want to go about things. If you want to roll the dice on a rookie and kind of see where that goes, and dependent on if you have that stack, I wouldn't necessarily want to trot out the whole Texans offense, but one of those things that I could definitely understand. You got to gamble on one guy. You got a little bit of a risk, but you know what you have in Joe Mixon, and then you give up a little bit of a younger asset in Jalen Waddle. But at the same time, we don't really know what he is right now. If Tyreek Hill gets sitting off, maybe he might explode. But at the same time, I think it's a pretty even trade, and I think either way, I wouldn't be upset. Just depending on how my team's formed.
Yeah. So Tucker Kraft, you mentioned Tucker Kraft. I think that's a really good one to talk about because a lot of leagues now are going tight end premium, and Tucker Kraft I think is going to be very, very sneaky. Okay, so here's a trade for Tucker Kraft that happened last month. It's Tucker Kraft in a 25 second. So clearly they haven't had their draft yet. So Tucker Kraft in a 25 second for a 26 second, a 25 second, and Joe Milton. I don't know how. Yeah, so 2 seconds and Joe Milton for Kraft in a second.
my guess is that it's a pick swap of the seconds. Maybe they're getting a little more of a premium on that second rounder, so they're moving down to give up Kraft, and then they're getting Joe Milton. So it's probably a super flex non-tight end premium. Someone likes Milton. I would take that trade all day on the side of the Kraft. I think that's a brilliant engineered.
Yeah, especially if you can move up in a second, go from like 11 to like 204 or 205. I think that's good because I think after 206, really you really got to be like a film nerd like us to be able to capitalize on that. Anybody after that, but no, I think that's good too.
Yeah, that's a smash on the Kraft side. I like that. We're just taking advantage of someone that thinks Joe Milton's going to be more than just a backup.
Yeah, and then you got somebody here like back in April. So after the draft and everything like that, they traded Kraft for a 25 second and 25 third. I mean, dude, give me Kraft all day.
All day.
That's a horrible trade. If you're the one who gave up Tucker Kraft, you're an idiot. Because there's no tight end in the second round that's going to give you better points than Tucker Kraft. There's not.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have to replace that player at some point. Unless you're just stupid loaded at tight end, I still would never sell Tucker Kraft that cheap. I'm sorry. Even if I'm loaded at that.
Mm-hmm.
So what's another player you think that a good trade scenario for somebody we talked about?
Justin Fields. I've been thinking about him for some reason. I've seen that he's QB 24 in most leagues. He's going to be the starting quarterback for the Jets. He's a younger prospect, and am I crazy to think that I could get him for like a second?
I don't think in Superflex you can. I think Justin Fields' stock has risen now that he's 100% the guy in New York. At least in Pittsburgh, he was on the redemption tour and people were getting back on the Justin Fields hype train because Justin Fields had a lot of truthers coming out into the NFL. And then they slowly were like, okay, maybe we made a mistake on this guy. And then in Pittsburgh, he kind of reinvented himself. And now in New York, he's the starting quarterback. So I don't know. I don't know if you can get Justin Fields in for a second. I don't think you can. I mean, if you can, dude, you do that and you don't think twice. Just because I think he's got a good supporting cast around him.
If you're going single quarterback, nothing crazy, I think you might be able to pull something off.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. If you're one
single
QB, yeah.
QB. Yeah, for sure. See, I think he's a good QB target. Actually, I think Superflex people know what they have. He's probably their quarterback two, and he's going to put up quarterback one production. But I think he's a great single QB, and I do play in a single QB league, and I do like it. And I think he'd be a really good sneaky guy to add, much along the lines of like a Jalen Milrow, like in a Jalen Hurts. Those guys were going late, and you never know, they pan out. And Justin Fields, he's given nothing but QB1 production whenever he plays, and he's going to play the whole year. So what's to say he's not going to do the same thing this year again?
Yeah. Yeah. And you bring up a good point. Knowing your league. So, like, knowing the difference between super flex and and one QB PPR. So, those values are going to be different, you know? So, that's, I'm glad y'all brought that up because some people need to realize, like, hey, if you're playing in different leagues, the value that this quarterback went in this league is not going to be the same if you swap leagues. So, that's good. I'm glad y'all mentioned that. So, Adam Thielen.
Okay.
So there hasn't been much movement on Adam Thielen just because, like, exactly for the reason why I put him on my list is because no one's talking about him. He has no buzz. You can get him for dirt cheap, essentially. I mean, if the person's going to let him go, obviously, it all depends on how that person values the player. We're not saying like, boom, hey, the Kingmaker said, y'all, this is what you got to give them to me for. Like, look, no, because at the end of the day, a player is only worth what somebody will pay for them or what you're going to ask for. You can ask for whatever you want. You may not get it, but anyways. So with that being said, so most recent trade for Adam Thielen that I'm seeing here, we got Adam Thielen, a 26 second and a 25 first. So pretty good pick. And then they're getting a 26 second, a 25 first. So again, the pick swap here.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing, probably same thing with the 26 second. They're probably swapping their own picks back and forth is what I'm thinking. So, but they're getting in trade for Adam Thielen, that second first, they're getting Jake Ferguson and they're getting Rome Odunze. So this is a juicy one. This is one for me. Like it's really going to depend on what the roster build is here. It sucks I don't have more information on this because I feel like the guy giving away Thielen, the first and second, is trying to maybe rebuild and get earlier picks, younger players, things like that. Because why wouldn't you want Jake Ferguson, who's a good young tight end, and Rome Odunze, who was my favorite receiver coming out last year? So,
first and a second, and then he had Tyler Thielen, and this guy's getting Ferguson and
Odunze. So a first and second swap.
Yep.
Plus Ferguson and Odunze.
That's crazy.
The only way I can see that without any context is if the first and second swap is if the Thielen guy is getting an earlier first and second. Like a real earlier first and second.
I think that's what the goal with these players are with Adam Thielen is if you find a tier in your rookie draft, or let's just say your 25 drafts are over, we'll look on to 26. You can look at your 26 opponent. You can look at your opponent and say, okay, his second is going to be later. My second, you might have someone else's second that's projected earlier, and you could say, hey, you're rebuilding. You got Thielen. I'll give you my late 26 second, and I will take and you use Thielen to tier off of that and move back in that second and grab Thielen, but still stay in the second round. I think that's kind of what you have to do with these players is you kind of need to play mind games. You need to look to future picks. You need to look at the roster builds. You need to look at whose pick that person owns, and you can start using these picks and maybe tiering back, but still staying in the same round, but talking your opponent into grabbing one of these players, backfilling them, getting a flex for your roster, but still staying in a relevant range for the draft or having some capital to spend later in the year for an added player.
Yeah. that's definitely a lot to digest. So hopefully everybody's taking notes because there's a science to this. Like Mick's explaining, you do have some workarounds to get, because obviously the goal, you pick what your goal is. Am I rebuilding or am I trying to go for it? Am I retooling? Because I'm doing that in one league also. I'm retooling. I'm not necessarily rebuilding, but I'm offloading some of my older assets. Um, I mean, I don't know if you want, we can talk about a trade that happened in our league involving a prime time running back. That's up to you, Mick. We can put that out there
I
if you
think we
want.
could end it. I think we could end the show on that because I have an interesting way of retooling. I think I have a good topic on that. For since we're talking trades, it's a good time to talk about get in your league's group chat and start voting on topics that are going to improve the league. And I think one topic that'll improve the league is a no trade deadline. A no trade deadline. So this is
Juicy.
what I bring up on that point. A lot of players, so let's see, we have 10 Sundays until football starts, right? So you go to your league right now,
10.
10,
10.
motherfucking 10.
I'm glad you
So
caught that reference. We're
you
we're
go,
older than most of you people out there, probably.
so keep this in mind. It depends on your league. If your league is a bunch of slapdicks and you think they're going to front load when you're in the playoffs and some team in first is going to be able to buy Saquon and just stack his team, probably not a good league for a no trade deadline. But from what I've seen, most dynasty leagues are pretty mature and they can do this. And this is my point exactly. So last year in my league, I had a team that was in the top three, but it had Olave, it had Ayuk, it had Pacheco. All the guys went down, so I did not make the playoffs, right? So my league had a no trade deadline. So what I did is I still had some serviceable players I could sell in the playoffs. I sold Rico Dottle. I sold Hubbard when he was going off. I sold Sincere McCormick. I sold the other running back from Oakland that escapes my brain right now. But my point is, I took those picks, which were seconds and thirds, and then I sent them into the 25 draft. And then those picks became RJ Harvey. I maneuvered around a little bit. I got Luther Burton, I got Jaden Higgins, and I got Dalton Kincaid, all because I was able to sell those players to needy teams that wanted to make a push. So my team wasn't rebuilding. It was strong, but it got injured. So I retooled. So I took advantage of the no trade deadline. I grinded the waivers. I picked up Sincere McCormick. I sold them for a third. I sold those other players, and I was able to retool on top of our trade, Justin. So I also did acquire a second round pick who I took Mason Taylor. And Mason Taylor, we know Justin likes a lot. So in our league, me and Justin made a big boy trade. He decided he's going to rebuild. So I traded for Saquon Barkley. So Justin, why don't you break down that trade and we could get into the nitty gritty?
All righty. So yeah, this was definitely the very first like blockbuster trade of our league. We kicked it off after the draft. So Saquon Barkley, of course, is the feature here. So nothing really much you got to give past Saquon Barkley. And in return, got a Mason Taylor, who, like Mick said, everybody knows I'm just in love with this year. A 26th third, another 26th third, a 27 first, which was the key thing if you're buying into the 2027 draft, and a 27 second. So retooling, offloading an older running back. I still have Jonathan Taylor on my roster. I mean, if things go right, then yeah, okay, I could still be contending, but I'm not planning on it. But yeah, so what I was looking at okay, Saquon Barkley, he got me what I wanted. I mean, not what I wanted. Everybody wants a championship. I finished second in that league. He's still proving that he's the guy. Like he's a dog, and they love him in Philadelphia. So much so that AJ Brown was pissed off because he wasn't getting targets because they were just feeding Saquon Barkley. Which, hey, sucks to suck. You got Saquon Barkley, bro. You run the ball. that's how you win ball games. And clearly they won a Super Bowl. So congratulations. And I'm in on the 27th class, at least for what I know from them that I've seen, watching these freshmen and sophomores and stuff, on Saturdays. I'm looking at getting a quarterback. So in this league, I don't really have like solid quarterbacks. Okay, so give you the rundown of the quarterbacks. I mean, I've got my starters are Jared Goff and Tua Tagovailoa, and then my quarterback 3 is Kirk Cousins right now. So I'm hoping he gets traded, something like that. I'm not doing well at quarterback. Let's just be real about it, right? I went running back heavy, so I have Najee Harris, who of course now with Amar and Hampton is not looking great, but I don't think he's going to be obsolete. So Jonathan Taylor being my feature running back there, not great. But I've got Devin Neal, who I'm holding out hope for the Saints. So there's a lot of things that are going to have to go right for this team that are going to, help compete. So I'm not trying to compete this year. That's why I made the Barkley deal, to move ahead and try and get some 2027 draft capital. But yeah, so that's how the trade went. It was Barkley for Mason Taylor. This is a Superflex tight end premium league, so that's why.
Double tight end.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's start 2, so that's why getting to Mason Taylor was so appealing to me. Now, this is a league where I have Sam Laporta. Okay, so I don't have to worry about that. Sam Laporta is going to be just fine. I did go ahead and take in the last round a Gunnar Helm, because I've mentioned on here that I think Gunnar Helm is going to be a red zone monster for Tennessee. I think Cam Ward is going to look to Gunnar Helm a lot instead of Chiaconquo. The younger guys always tend to seem to stay together. We saw that with Andy Dalton and AJ Green. They came out just as rookies and they just clicked immediately. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen. To just say that the odds are ever in your favor. But that's kind of how that went down, and the justification of that. So it's not a rebuild. It's more of a retool and see if these picks can become something. These young guys can become something. So we'll see.
So Slayton, I'm curious to hear, before we close out, your thoughts on no trade deadline and then the Saquon trade. What would you do?
So I'm all for, if Buddy wants to sell his entire team to try to make it to the top, go for it, brother. Send it all out. I'm one of those people that, live on the sword, die on the sword type of deal. And I've seen a lot of people go out there and they spend everything that they have to try to build up their team and still lose. And there's nothing that makes me feel happier inside than to watch people do that. So that is something that I absolutely love seeing. So the trade deadline, I don't think there should be trade deadlines whatsoever in Dynasty. I think you should be able to trade at all times, at any time that you want to do it. Now, the funny thing is I did acquire Saquon Barkley last year for a 105. And everybody in my league was like, oh, running back's dead. You're crazy, that type of stuff. And he went out there and balled out for me. So, I mean, like, I don't care what you pay for Saquon Barkley. He is a hammer, and he will be a difference maker on your team. So I'm one of those people that, I feel better with hammers on my team than I do with picks, if I'm being honest with you. You can always sell out, and you can always get more picks. They're easy to come by. A lot of people will typically sell their picks with players. So, I mean, I'm one of those people that if you can acquire a hammer, by all means, acquire a hammer.
Yeah. We've got
the only thing that scared me is his touches last season. So I do think it was a prime time for Justin to sell him, because anytime a running back has that amount of touches, it is statistically proven that they do not meet the standard next year. They do break down. So I do think if you were going to sell Saquon, it is pinnacle time to sell him. But before we go, I do like that question at the bottom of the chat. Do you guys see that? You guys?
Yeah. By James Tucker is asking, Michael Penix Jr. in a 1 QB start 10. Okay, that's going to make a difference. Start 10 or a 26th, third and 27 third. So it's a 1 QB,
Yeah.
start 10. So how are we feeling about Michael Penix Jr. in a 1 QB start 10?
Penix in a heart.
If James is still in the chat, who's your other QB? Post that real quick before we let off. But
definitely need to know that.
If you don't have another QB and Penix would be your QB1, I don't hate that at all, because in a 1 QB, third rounds are way more less valued. It's hard to hit on those third rounders, even in this deep ass class.
Hard to get a starting QB.
He says Hurts and Allen.
Hurts and Allen, then I'm not making that trade. I'm not making that trade. You could. Here's your thing. Here's what I would do, James. I would sell either Hurts or Allen, pick one, and then add Penix, but then sell one of Hurts or Allen, because you don't need both of those guys. You only can start one. So add Penix as your QB2, and then sell one of those QBs for a first and try to deepen your roster elsewhere with running back or receiver.
Yeah.
Because
Penix could become a quality QB2 on your roster. I mean, yes, look, Josh Allen just won the MVP. I don't think you're getting rid of Josh Allen. I would get rid of Jalen Hurts first. Me personally, just because I think Josh Allen is such a bigger fantasy asset. With the Eagles coming fresh off of that Super Bowl win, this is prime Jalen Hurts sell season right now. So if you're trying to do that, dude, rack it in. Like, go ahead and just get everything that you can get for Jalen Hurts if you can get it, man.
Yeah. You don't need two of those guys in 1 QB. If I get it, you want the insurance. If Allen goes down, then shit, you backfill him with Hurts. You're not missing much.
Right.
But it's a gamble. I mean, how deep are your positions on your roster? I would literally try to take Hurts and try to deepen my roster and see if I can add an RB or a wide receiver and bolster that lineup. Because start 10 into 1 QB is pretty deep, because you're not starting another QB. So that's just another added flex.
And there's so much, and a start 10. So that means, like, you've got, depending on how deep your rosters are, if it's start 10, then your rosters probably around 20 person rosters or something like that, But dude, yeah, do what Mick said. Go trade Hurts and try and get you like another like a wide receiver 2 for your team, or you could go out and get a prime time wide receiver for Jalen Hurts. Now, of course, look, you might depend on how many teams you have in your league, right? But if you can go get a T. Higgins for that, bro, I don't think that's a bad deal at all. If you can go get a couple guys like a Jamison Williams and a DK Metcalf, like, I think that could be good. Plus maybe a second on top of that. I would say go try something like that. What do you think? What do you think, Slayton?
I think Jalen Hurts a top 5 asset quarterback. So I think you could trade him for a king ransom. You could get yourself a hammer running back or a hammer wide receiver, any way you look at it. I think anybody in that league, other than maybe 2 other people, because you have 2 of the top 5 QBs on your team currently. So, I mean, I would think that half of those guys in your league are frothing at the mouth just to get their hands on a rock solid QB. So, I mean, I think you could probably weasel your way into a big name wide receiver or a big name running back, or maybe, if it's a sneaky play, you could get a Brock Bowers. Think outside the box and get somebody that's going to be an absolute difference maker at the position that you're weakest at.
Yeah. This is what I'll say to end that, James. Thank you for the question, because that's a good question, and that got us rolling. That helped our show a lot. Take Jalen Hurts, look at all your teams tonight, and find a team that has a bad QB room, and then go to that team and find their strength at either wide receiver or running back, and then pick one of their guys and try to poach one of them. So if he has top 3 or 3 top receivers and he doesn't have a quarterback, that's the team you go. You start open up talks with that, and then open up talks with another team that doesn't have a solid QB but has a deep room at RB. Whatever you need. If you need a receiver, if you need an RB, find that team with the deep RBs or the deep receivers that doesn't have a quarterback, and then open up negotiations, and that's when you strike.
Either
100%.
message all your league mates and try to get them to go to Super Bowl.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I mean, not every QB is just going to be as successful as Shane Falco.
Yeah.
But it's we don't talk about the 96 Sugar Bowl game, but anyways. So that has been an amazing show. Thank you for that question there, James. Man, dude, that's awesome. We should do more of those. All right, well, look, we've talked about some interesting trades that we've seen for some of these players. We've talked about our favorite players we think you can go out and you can acquire cheaply, and they could be a starter for you. Not just a buy low, this and that, but they can actually be a starter on your roster this year. So go out, go get those players. Go try and man, just throw an offer out. You never know. I mean, just throw a couple offers for the same player. Change it up a little bit. Mix up your strategy there. And sometimes it don't even have to be strategy. Sometimes a player, a guy will say, hey, I don't like a Joe Mix. I don't want that age, or, you might be able to go out there and get a Derrick Henry for something that you didn't think you could just because he's older. All right. But everybody's been saying a guy like Derrick Henry is going to fall off any day now. But we never know. That's the beauty about this. You can go out there and Andrew Luck could be your franchise quarterback, and then he retires in the middle of nowhere, and then you're out of luck. So anyways, so that's our show, everybody. We thank you so much for joining us on the Kingmakers. Hopefully this helps you going out there and retooling, rebuilding, or just continue to dominate and bring home some championships. And if you do, we're definitely going to want to see them here, and we're going to brag about you. So keep coming back. Tell your friends. Tell your league mates. Of course, you're probably going to tell them after your draft, which is fine. You don't want to give away your secrets. But, hey, we're here for you. We're going to be here all season. We got training camp coming up. Training camp is going to be – man, we're going to have so much news from training camp. We're going to see position battles that are going to be directly affecting dynasty football, fantasy football, best ball. All that stuff. All that stuff is going to be here on Kingmaker Sports. So keep coming back. Please, please, please hit that like, subscribe, and share it. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your comments, and we will react to them live on the show. Before we get out of here, gentlemen, do we have anything that we want to plug, anything like that for the people?
Nothing crazy. Man, I'm still working on my end to get some buddies wrangled in on some crazy stuff for my home link, but other than that, nothing crazy yet. What about you guys?
Nope, same here. I just love it. It's my number one hobby. I'm glad I took up fantasy. I hope I can live a long life so I can play fantasy for as long as I want, especially Dynasty. But I got nothing to plug. I just do it for the love of the game.
There we go. There we go. Love it. Love it. All right, everybody. From all of us here at Kingmaker Sports, we appreciate your time, and we will see you on the next one.